Yeah, hello. Um, Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Anytime of the day you're privileged to be watching this. So I just want to quickly take you through some of the concepts that we've not yet talked about in class. Um, so for preparation towards your exam, right? Now, I think we're done with week 1, week 2, week 3. I'm not sure if we've done week 4. So I'll start from week 4. Yes. Let me make my screen picture. Don't know. Yeah, you should be able to see my screen now. All right. So today we'll be talking about vulnerabilities and risk assessment. Yeah, and the objectives of this particular lesson, this topic, is to be able to define what vulnerabilities are, understand their impact on cybersecurity landscape, identify different types of vulnerabilities that we have, understand risk assessment frameworks, and conduct a basic vulnerability assessment. So you should be able to conduct a basic vulnerability assessment after this lesson. So let's get into it. So understanding vulnerability assessment. What is a vulnerability? So a vulnerability is a weakness in the system, software, or human process. So the system, the software, or the human process, a weakness in these things, can be any of these things, that can now be exploited by attackers to gain unauthorized access or cause damage. So a weakness, vulnerability is just a weakness in the system, software, or human process. It could be the process that they will exploit. It could be the software, it could be the system, then that can be exploited. This weakness can be exploited by attackers. So if it's a weakness that cannot be exploited, by attackers to gain any unauthorized access or cause damage, that won't be a vulnerability, right? But it is a weakness that can be exploited by attackers to gain unauthorized access or cause damage. So that's just vulnerability in a nutshell. Now, what are the impacts of vulnerabilities on cybersecurity? Data breaches leading to financial and reputational damage. So if an attacker can exploit your system to gain unauthorized access, one of the impacts can be data breaches, which means data gets leaked out, right? Leading to financial and reputational damage. So the financial part might be in different ways. They can use that data to actually get money straight, you understand. So imagine they're able to get they're able to attack a vulnerability in a banking system and get a lot of people's ATM card details out, can easily use that to cause a lot of financial damage. Then reputational damage. When data leaks, the organization that's supposed to be in charge of the data, for example, now the bank in this case, you will not trust the bank anymore. So the reputation of the bank is going to tank, like damage. And then people can start suing the bank. And that is another financial uh, damage to the bank. You understand? So that's one of the impacts. Another impact is unauthorized access to sensitive information. As you can see, if they're able to gain unauthorized access to the system, they can have unauthorized access to sensitive information, maybe check how much some people have in their bank accounts and all of that. You understand? So let's look at a world where kidnappers are very sophisticated now, and they are not just kidnapping any random person. So they kidnap you based on your account balance, right? So normally from outside they can't see you and know what's in your account. But if they are able to hack your bank and have unauthorized access to your information, the sensitive information, for example, your account balance, your BVN, your NIN, you understand, your home address, and all of those things, they can put that together to attack you. Then disruptions in services and operations. So this is another impact of vulnerabilities. So a vulnerability that is exploited can cause damage to system, which will lead to disruption in services and operations. So imagine the NIST system. You don't know the NIST system. So let me explain what the NIST system is. The NIST system is that system that stands between all banks in Nigeria. So when you want to transfer money from GT Bank to Opina, it's going to go through the NIST system. So it's the name system that will conduct it. When there is a problem, the name system is probably the one that is causing the problem, right? So now, let's say, for example, the name system has a vulnerability and it was exploited successfully and caused damage to the name system, maybe bringing it down. You can see that there will be disruption in services and operations of the banking system, which means you will not be able to transfer money or receive money at that particular time. Even sometimes where NIBS is down, not due to an attack, maybe something just happened and it went down, transfers will not go for that particular period. Interbank transfers, because transfers within the bank itself is not going through NIBS because it's within the bank. You understand? But transfers that are going outside of the bank to another bank is going to go through the NIBS system. That's how it has been set up. Now, another impact is exploitation for malware infections and cyber attacks. So now, these are just the impacts that we are talking about. There could be a lot more impact, right? So the impacts can even be as much as causing the death of individuals. So, for example, imagine if the health sector, an hospital, was attacked, right? In a sane system where the hospitals are also using computer systems and they can get attacked. That's what I meant. I'm not talking about the ones that still carry papers up and down. Now, let's move to types of vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities can exist in your software, in your hardware, and human elements of a system. So any of these can have weaknesses in them. That's vulnerability, right? So the types, the software vulnerabilities, I have hardware vulnerabilities and human vulnerabilities. So now let's start with software vulnerabilities. Softwares now, you know what softwares are. So software vulnerabilities are weakness in programs, operating system, or applications that can be exploited by attackers. When we're talking about software in CSC 111, right? So softwares include application software, system software. You understand that operating system is an example of a system software. So application software, WhatsApp, Word, Microsoft Word, Chrome, and all of that, they are application software. So now, vulnerabilities in these softwares, you understand, applications are the ones that are categorized under software vulnerabilities. Now, common software vulnerabilities that you can have, weaknesses in a software. You have unpatched software. When software is not updated, every time you see WhatsApp, there will be an update. Even your operating system, your iOS will have an update, your Android will have an update. They are patching flaws in the software itself. Sometimes, there will be a bug that they will patch. And as I've said, I don't know, I've explained this before, I think, but I'm going to reiterate it. The ransomware attack that happened was caused by a vulnerability in the operating system that has already been patched. So the people that got attacked are the people that failed to update their software, you understand, for that patch to take effect. So unpatched software is a common software vulnerabilities. So when software is not updated, attackers can exploit known security flaws in those softwares. We have weak or default passwords. So this is a very common vulnerability. So now you see most websites, they are trying to help you get a very strong password. You understand? And then put two-factor authentication on that, or multi-factor authentication. So weak or default passwords, as easy as it sounds, that is as easy as it is. So using easy to guess passwords makes unauthorized access easier. So imagine your password is 12345. That is just very easy to guess. I'm sure I've explained this in class before. So that's another common software vulnerabilities. Then we have buffer overflow. This is very important, very popular with programming languages that old, like C, C++. So buffer overflow. What's buffer overflow? When a program writes more data than expected, there's a memory that has been allocated for the program to write data. When the program now writes more data than the memory can take, that's when you have buffer overflow. So your memory is like a container, right? So it has a fixed size. You all have phones now, so you know that you have RAMs, you have ROMs, and they have fixed size. They are not unlimited. So from your memory, part of that memory would be allocated to the program that is running. So imagine that 2 gigabytes was allocated for a program, and then the program ends up writing data of 4 gigabytes. You know that that container cannot take 4 gigabytes. It can only take 2 gigabytes. So this can cause a system crash or allow attackers to run malicious code on your system. So now, another common software vulnerability is SQL injection. SQL is structured query language. So it's an example of programming language, right? Then that is used to query database, retrieve data from the database. When you are working with data, you have to store that data somewhere. The banking system has all our data stored somewhere, even your account balance is stored somewhere, right? If it's not being stored somewhere, you will not be able to retrieve them. So that's the function of the database. Now, with SQL injection vulnerabilities, attackers can insert malicious code into a database query. The database query is what we are using to talk to the database, like, okay, give me this particular information, or store this particular information, or I want to modify this particular information, right? Or I want to even delete this particular information. So attackers can now insert malicious code into that database query to gain access to sensitive data. Cross-site scripting attack. So cross-site scripting attack, also formerly known as XSS. The X is for cross and the SS is for site and scripting. This is injecting malicious scripts into websites to steal user information. So cross-site scripting is similar to SQL injection because both of them are injecting malicious code into something. But SQL injection is focused on database, while cross-site scripting is focused on websites, right? So that's like the difference. An example we have here is the 2017 Equifax data breach that happened because an unpatched software vulnerability was exploited. And I also made mention of the ransomware attack too that happened more recently. Now that's about software vulnerabilities. Let's move to hardware vulnerabilities. Hardware vulnerabilities exist in physical components. As we know, hardware is a physical component, right? Unlike softwares. So now, the hardware vulnerabilities are the weakness that exists in the physical components of computers and networks. You have your routers for the network, you have your switch for the computers, you have your CPU, your RAM, you understand, your motherboard, even your USB ports. Those are hardwares, right? Now, common hardware vulnerabilities that we have: outdated or unsupported hardware. Just like you have unpatched software, so that's basically like outdated software. So old hardware may not receive security updates, making it vulnerable, right? Then firmware vulnerabilities. Attackers can exploit flaws in firmware, software embedded in hardware. So firmwares are software embedded in hardware. They help us control our hardware, you understand. So attackers can exploit flaws in these firmwares. Physical access attack. This is straightforward. If an attacker gains physical access to a device, they can bypass security controls. So you can see that's another thing. If an attacker can steal your system, you understand, they have physical access to that your device now. They don't have to start trying to get you through some other attack. You understand? You have physical access, so they can bypass a lot of security controls. So that's another hardware vulnerability. Side channel attacks. Exploiting weakness in hardware design itself, e.g. Spectre and meltdown attacks on CPUs. These attack the hardware straight up. The meltdown attacks will make your CPU work so hard that it just melts down. You understand? The CPUs, they have maximum capacity that they can go. So if you overwork them, just like your electronic device, when you overload the electronic device with voltage, it can melt down, it can, break down, spark, cause fire, and all of that. So, and these hardwares are mostly electronic devices too. Now, example, attackers can install keyloggers, small hardware device, on keyboards to capture your typed passwords. That's an example. So that is targeting the hardware, right? Keyboard. Excuse me. Now, human vulnerability, the last type of vulnerabilities that we're going to be looking into: social engineering. So human errors and manipulations can be exploited to gain unauthorized access to systems. Now, common human vulnerabilities: phishing attacks. You know what phishing attacks are: tricking users into providing sensitive information through fake emails or messages or text messages, even phone calls. Weak password practices: reusing old passwords or using simple passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or reusing the same password everywhere, which means once your password gets leaked, they have password to all your other accounts because you are using the same password across. Now, recently, there are what is it called? There are password managers that you can use. This password manager, they help you create very unique, very hard to crack, almost impossible to crack passwords, right? For each of your accounts, and all those passwords will be different. Now, you don't have to remember the password because that's where most of the problem comes. Even people that use the same password for everything, they tend to forget that particular password, right? So these password managers help you manage all your password. All your password will be there. It will be there and secured, and then you have one single password for that password manager. So anytime you need to log into any of your accounts, you only need to open your password manager and the password will automatically be be inserted for you, and then you can log in with that password. You don't even need to know the password, right? And your password is safe there. So you need to have just one password for that password manager itself. So that's the only password you need to remember. Now, lack of awareness. This is ignorance, when people don't actually know what's going on. They don't understand. So imagine all these are old people. You can just call them up or send them something. You see them on WhatsApp a lot of times. They'll be posting stuff. They'll be posting links that are malicious because they are not aware. There's lack of awareness. So clicking on malicious links or downloading unverified software, for example. Insider threats: employees or trusted individuals leaking data or helping attackers. This can also be spies, right? So those are the insider threats. They are humans. So all these are common human vulnerabilities. Now, an example: a hacker pretends to be an IT support agent and convinces an employee to reveal their login details. So you see, they do this a lot. I understand. You might have even seen videos on YouTube of people actually doing this. Yes, they pretend to be. In fact, if you watch enough movies, you've seen this. This has happened. You've seen this in movies, and it happens in real life too. That they will just call you up and pretend to be an IT support agent or from your bank. You know all those things. So that's a typical example of human vulnerabilities. Now, introduction to risk assessment frameworks. So, what is a risk assessment framework itself? Now, a risk assessment framework is a framework that provides structured approach. Framework can understand from the common sense meaning of framework. Framework is to have something arranged. You understand? So it's a structured approach to identifying, analyzing, and mitigating cybersecurity risks. So there are different types of frameworks, right? So each of them provides their own specific structured approach to these things, which is identifying, analyzing, and mitigating cybersecurity risks. Now, one of the framework that we are going to look at, very popular, is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. The NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. National Institute of Standards and Technology. There are a lot of frameworks out there. There are some that are specific to countries. There are some that are worldwide. You can always check their website to see their the structure approach that they've provided. So it's widely used for cybersecurity risk management. Very popular. NIST 5 core functions. So this is just like a summarized version of the framework. If you go to the NIST website, you will see a complete and comprehensive version of it. But we're not going into that. This is just introduction to cybersecurity. We are not talking about the cybersecurity frameworks or governance and compliance here. So now, the NIST 5 core functions we're looking at, just in summary: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. So you identify the assets now. Then you protect them. Then you detect if something is wrong. Then you are going to respond to the issue. Then you recover from that issue, from the attack. So now, identify, understand the assets, systems, and risk. So when you get into the company, you have to first of all look around and try to understand what their assets are. It's not everything that are assets. You understand? There are some things that are not assets. You get. So they can be there. If the attacker attacks, it's no problem. There's nothing for them to lose from that particular what is it called? Asset. So now you understand the assets, you get the systems that they are running and the risks. Then the next thing you move to is to implement safeguards to limit the risks. So that's protection. So you try to protect this asset and systems by implementing safeguards to limit risks. Because risks, in all fairness, cannot be reduced to zero. So you limit it as much as possible, right? When you get to learning more about cybersecurity, you understand other things, that there are some risks that even you are going to take, you are going to allow the risk. You understand? And you not try to block the risk. You get. So the third thing is now to detect. So it's very important. After you've identified and you're protecting, it's very important that you detect, because your protection is implementing safeguards to limit the risks. So you cannot be entirely safe. So that's why you have to still monitor systems for security incidents, because even with all your safeguards, there could be security incidents. So, and what will save you is to monitor your system for these security incidents so that you can detect them on time and respond and then recover. So now, very important, that third step, detection. And respond, take action when security incidents occur. You understand? In cybersecurity, what they say is, it is not if. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. You get. So you are going to prepare for when it happens. So respond, take action when security incidents occur. Then recover, restore normal operations after an attack. So after an attack, you have to recover, you restore normal operations, like somebody that got sick now, you have to recover. Now, example, a company uses the NIST framework to improve its security by conducting regular risk assessments on their assets and systems. Now, another framework is the ISO 27001. ISO 27001. ISO is International Organization for Standardization, right? So that's another organization that has their own framework. So we are just going to be looking at these two, NIST and ISO. ISO is a global cybersecurity standard that helps organizations protect information assets, just like NIST, but they work in different ways. Now, key aspect of ISO 27001, identify cybersecurity risks, implementing security controls, then continuously monitoring and improving security measures. So you can see the overlap between NIST and ISO. Identification is very important, right? And risk management is also very, very important. An example, a bank follows the ISO 27001 guidelines to secure customer financial data. Your ATM card, details, your PIN, your account balance, account details, your personal details, your transaction details, and all of those things. Now, conducting a basic vulnerability assessment, when we started, I said by the end of the lesson, you should be able to conduct a basic vulnerability assessment. What is a vulnerability assessment? A vulnerability assessment is the process of identifying, evaluating, and prioritizing security weakness in a system. Vulnerability and weakness. So now, the assessment is the process of identifying these vulnerabilities, the weakness, evaluating them, and prioritizing them, because there will be different weakness. So you prioritize according to the one that is the most important, the one that is the least important. You get. So steps in the vulnerability assessment now. So what are the steps you take? So you get into a company, an organization, and you want to conduct a basic vulnerability assessment. What are the steps you take? So these are straightforward steps. From what we've been learning, first, identify the assets. So you first have to know what are these organization assets. So you list all systems, software, and devices to be assessed. This is an assessment now. You're conducting a basic vulnerability assessment. So you identify the assets. Now, you scan for vulnerabilities. So for each asset, you try to scan, identify the vulnerabilities in those assets. You can use tools like mmap, network mapping, Nessus, OpenVAS to detect security flaws. So these are tools that a cybersecurity expert uses to scan for vulnerabilities. There are more tools than this, right? There are more tools than this. But just in basic vulnerability assessment, you can use these tools. Analyze risks. You can see we are still coming back to risk. Risk management, very, very important. So now, after you've identified the assets, you've scanned for the vulnerabilities, you are now going to analyze risks, determine which vulnerabilities are critical and need immediate attention. So that's like you are prioritizing, right? You analyze, you prioritize. Okay, after you've evaluated, you identify, you've evaluated, you will now prioritize that, okay, this vulnerability is critical. Imagine you have SQL injection vulnerability now. You know that is critical because that can give the attacker access to your database, which stores all the information, right? So that can easily take you from normal to a data breach straight up. So you first of all have to rate that as number one. Imagine you have some other human vulnerabilities. Maybe somebody does not know how to install antivirus now, for example. That comes with that. You can teach the person later, you can install for the person, right? But you see that SQL injection vulnerability comes above that. So now you are going to analyze risk, which is when you determine which vulnerabilities are critical and need immediate attention. Then the next thing, you mitigate the vulnerabilities, right? Mitigate. Apply security patches, update software, and strengthen configurations. Things that you need to do to mitigate the vulnerabilities, to try to fix the vulnerabilities, take it away, reduce the risk of exploiting it to like bare minimum. So that is what you do when you mitigate vulnerabilities. So example of things you can do is to apply security patches, update your software, and strengthen your configurations. Now, the last thing, you are doing an assessment now. So you have to have a record of what you've done. So that's document. You document your findings. So you keep records of the detected vulnerabilities and actions that you've taken. So we have different vulnerabilities now. It could be software, it could be hardware, it could be human vulnerability. Maybe you found somebody that lack awareness about phishing and all of that, and then you teach that person. You make that person informed about this particular vulnerability. So that's an action that you've taken to fix the vulnerability. If you apply security patches, that's actions that you've taken. So that's the last thing. You document your finding by keeping records of detected vulnerabilities and the action you've taken. All right. So let's move on. You can look at the class activity and the summary, takeaways, and homework assignments on your own time because we don't have much time and we have a lot more to cover. So, all right, now our next topic is defensive security techniques. Defense. So you have to build your defense in case you get attacked. A house without defense is easy to attack than one with a defense. So let's say a house, there's no fence, there's no gates. It's easy for people to try to come in. And when there's house, there's gates. In fact, on your fence, you still put barbed wire. You understand? So that's an example of defense in depth. Then your house, you have a bar door. You understand? Before the main door, right? So those are examples of defensive techniques when it comes to houses. Now, the objectives of this lesson now is to understand the role of firewalls and intrusion detection systems in cybersecurity. You should be able to explain the importance of patch management and system updates. We've been talking about this. So right now, I'm sure you know the importance of patch management and system updates already, but we'll talk about them properly, formally. You should be able to describe the secure software development lifecycle. So this is developing software securely. You understand? while you are developing the software, you are putting in mind the security. Understand the basics of endpoint security and how to protect devices. Introduction to defensive security now. Yeah, so introduction to defensive security. Defensive security, what is it? From a layman's term, you already understand what defensive security is. You are just trying to protect something. So defensive security in cybersecurity refers to the techniques and tools that you use to protect computer systems, networks, and data from cyber threats. The techniques and the tools used to protect computer systems, networks, and data from cyber threats. So that's defensive security. It's not more than that. So we have defensive security, we have offensive security, right? So now, defense and offense for people that are watching football. So unlike offensive security, which focus on ethical hacking and penetration testing, defensive security focuses on prevention, detection, and response. So you understand. So it's defensive, it's not offensive. It's not trying to hack something or penetrate something. It's trying to prevent, detect, and respond. Now, key goals of defensive security. Key goals of defensive security. Prevent cyber attacks before they happen. So that's one goal of defensive security. You are defending, you're trying to prevent something from happening. So prevent cyber attacks before they happen. Detect, you can see prevention, detection, and response, right? In the key goals, you can see how these are coming together. Detect threats in real time. Detect threats as they are happening, right? Then minimize damage if an attack occurs. And then ensure systems remain secure and operational. It's very important. Business continuity, that's what it is being called. Ensure systems remain secure and operational. The business is continuing. Users can access the system. The system is functional, it's operational, and it's secured. So these are key goals of defensive security. Now, we'll talk about firewalls and intrusion detection systems and when it comes to defensive security. So those are like some tools and techniques that are used in defensive security. So now, implementing firewalls and intrusion detection systems, right? Firewalls, now, as the first thing. A firewall is a security device or software. It could be an hardware. There are hardware firewalls and there are software firewalls. Software firewalls, they are very, very popular. In fact, you have it on your laptop. If you have laptops like this, you have Windows firewall and it's there. That's the software firewall. Let me show you an example. See, this is Windows Defender firewall. You understand? So I can do a lot of things here. You can see we have inbound rules, outbound rules. You can set rules because firewalls deal with rules. So if I've set rules that this particular IP address should not be available for this my system. Nothing on my system should be able to communicate with this particular IP address. Then nothing on my system will be able to communicate with that particular IP address. And if I've also set rules, that's why you have inbound and outbound rules. Inbound rules is for things that are coming into your system. Outbound is for things that are going out of your system, right? So if I want to block apps on my system from communicating with a particular IP address, I'll set it in where? I'll set it in the outbound rules because I'm trying to block my system from communicating with something outside. So that is outbound. So for inbound now, I'm trying to stop something from communicating with my own system. So from outside in now. So that's inbound rules. And you use these rules to protect your system from a lot of things. So let's say, for example, you have a number of known malicious IP address. You can just block them, both inbound and outbound, right? You can also block applications too, as you can see here. You can block applications from having interactions with the outside. or the outside having interactions with them. Let me show you an example. Let me come to firewall and say, oh, you can see some applications here. For example, Camtasia now. I've blocked Camtasia inbound. I've blocked anything from trying to communicate with Camtasia at all. You understand? ChatGPT can communicate with things can communicate with it, right? Because I need that to work. But Camtasia, I've blocked. You understand? And there's a reason why I blocked it. Let's leave that one. So that is an example of a software firewall. There are hardware firewalls too, like Cisco hardware firewalls. Those ones that are not easy to come by. Now, a firewall, as I was saying, is a security device, an hardware, a device, or software that monitors and controls network traffic based on predefined security rules. Those are the security rules that I was telling you about now. We have inbound, outbound now, right? It monitors and controls. You see, by the time you set your inbound and outbound rules, for it to be able to work, because it's going to be controlling the network traffic, it has to monitor the network traffic. So it monitors the network traffic to know, and then it will apply the security rules that it predefined to that particular traffic that is monitoring. So it monitors and controls network traffic based on predefined security rules. So it's monitoring the network traffic, and you define some security rules. It will now use that to control the network traffic. So Camtasia that have blocked inbound, have set inbound rules to block all communications to it. It's going to be monitoring the network traffic. When it sees that the network traffic is trying to communicate with Camtasia and it's against the rule that I've set, it will block that network traffic. It will allow that network traffic. So you understand? So it acts as a barrier between a trusted internal network and an untrusted external network most of the time, e.g. the internet mostly. So that is a firewall. Now we have different types of firewalls. You have network firewalls, host-based firewalls, hardware firewalls, software firewalls. This overlaps, right? Your network firewall could be hardware, it could be software. Your host-based firewall could be hardware, it could be software. So they overlap. So these are the different types of firewalls that we have. Network firewalls now, they protect the entire network, e.g. the company network. E.g., let's say Muhammad Kamadi University now have like a network system all around the school. So the network firewall will protect our entire network. Host-based firewalls, these protect individual devices, e.g. the Windows firewall that I just showed you. This Windows firewall is just to protect my own laptop, my own device. So that's host-based. Host, a device. Network, hold the entire network. You can see the difference. Now, hardware firewalls, they are physical device, they are security device placed between a network and the internet. So they filter traffic between the internet and the network. So this, and they are physical devices, right? Now, we have software devices like Windows Firewall that I showed you. There are programs installed on computers to filter traffic based on some predefined rules. Example, a firewall can be configured to block all traffic from known malicious IP addresses, like I've said. I've given you this example. So, intrusion detection system. Now, so we are done with firewalls. We are talking about intrusion detection system. So I'm going to mention one other part of it that might not be in the notes. There is intrusion detection. There is intrusion prevention. So two systems that work in different ways. There is intrusion detection systems. There is intrusion prevention systems. IDS, IPS. So I'll explain IDS, and when I'm done, I'll try to explain what IPS is and how it's different from IDS. Now, an intrusion detection system, as the name sounds, intrusion detection, that is what it does. It's just English. This is a security tool that monitors network traffic for suspicious activity. It's going to detect suspicious activity. So that's the intrusion part and detection part. You understand? So it monitors network traffic for suspicious activity. It will now detect cyber attacks before they cause harm, right? It helps detect cyber attacks before they cause harm. Remember, going back to our defensive security techniques, what are we doing? Detecting the cyber attacks before they cause harm. So now, that's detection. It will detect. Now, we have types of IDS now. Network-based IDS, host-based IDS. From now, you already know what network and host-based. You already know what they mean, because we've already talked about network firewalls and host-based firewalls. So network-based IDS is just basically the same thing, but we know what firewalls are doing and what IDS are doing are two different things. So network-based IDS monitors network traffic for malicious activity. Works with network, right? All the network. Now, host-based IDS run on individual computers to detect suspicious behavior. So you can see host-based, individual computer, a particular device. Network-based, a whole network. Now, an example, if a hacker tries to access a system using brute force, that's trying to guess your password using many password attempts, the IDS, Intrusion Detection System, detects this unusual activity and alerts administrators. So that's what IDS will do. When it detects suspicious activity, it will alert the people that are in charge, the administrator. It will alert them. You understand? Something is happening. There's a suspicious activity going on the network, on the device. You understand? So he alerts the administrators. That's what IDS does. And that's everything it does. Monitors and alerts. Monitors and alerts. Now, there is now IPS, as I've said, Intrusion Prevention System. So intrusion prevention system is both doing what IDS is doing, monitoring, you understand, suspicious activity, and then preventing them. So now, unlike IDS that will alert the administrator, you understand, IPS is proactive, IDS is like passive, IPS is active. So when IPS, intrusion prevention, detects an unusual activity, it blocks it. IDS will not block it. IDS will only do what? It will only alert administrator that something suspicious is happening. IPS, it will block it. So for example, now this particular example we use for IDS, if an hacker tries to access a system using brute force, many password attempts, the IPS now, it will detect this usual activity. And then the alerting part is going to be blocking. It will block that particular hacker from accessing the system. So it will take, there are ways that you can do it. You can take the hacker's IP address and blocks it. You can take the hacker MAC address and blocks it from accessing the network. So now the particular IP address that is sending in so many passwords, it will now be blocked, which means all the passwords that it wants to be sending will not send anymore. Maybe after like 10 passwords sending, you say, this is an unusual activity. This particular IP address is sending 10 password attempts. It will block it. IDS will do what? IDS will suspect it, and the IDS will alert the administrator that, see, this particular IP address is trying to do this thing. So the administrator will now come, and then he will now be the one to actively do something, maybe block the person, all of that. Patch management and system updates. Patch management and system updates. So what's the formal definition for patch management? You already know what system updates are now. So patch management is the process of updating software, operating systems, and applications to fix security vulnerabilities and improve performance. So again, patch management is a process on its own. It's a whole process whereby you update the software, operating system, applications in general, because software, operating system, and applications, the applications, right? You update them to fix security vulnerabilities and improve performance. Why is patch management important? Why is it important? We've already gone through why it is important before, but let's look at these 3 points again. Fixes security weakness that hackers might exploit. So the vulnerability that hackers may exploit, it will fix it for you. Improve system stability and performance. You can see that in the definition. It's fix security vulnerabilities and improve performance. So improve system stability and performance. Then protect against malware and cyber attacks in general. Sure you get. So those are some reasons why patch managements are important. So common types of updates that we have. Common types of updates that we have in patch management. Security patches, feature updates, bug fixes. So you can see these 3 different common types of updates that we have. Security patches, straight up, you know what that is. Fixing vulnerabilities that hackers can exploit. That's security patches. Now, feature updates, that's adding new functionalities to the software, right? Adding new functionalities to software. Remember, when WhatsApp first came, they didn't have voice note status or video status and all of that. It is feature updates that brought that to us. Those are new functionalities for the software that we got from feature updates. Then bug fixes, resolve errors and improve stability. So that's bug fixes. If there are errors in the software, it will help you resolve them and improve stability. Now, best practices for patch management. So this is something that you should pay attention to. The best practices for patch management. What are the best practices for patch management? We only have 4 here. Enable automatic updates for critical software. You understand? So that the software will update automatically as soon as there is an update for it. So that's the best practices. Enable automatic updates for critical software. 1. Regularly check for updates on operating systems. Regularly check for updates on operating system. For example, your Windows, your Mac OS, your Linux, your iOS, your Android OS. Regularly check for updates on operating systems. Keep applications like your browsers up to date. Applications that you use to interact with the internet a lot. Make sure you keep them up to date. You use your browsers the most to communicate, to interact with the internet. So keep all those applications up to date. Your Instagram, your WhatsApp, and all of that. Now, test patches in a controlled environment before applying them to all systems. So this is in an organization setting. So all of these apply to organization and individual, but this last part is specifically applied in an organization settings. So you test patches in a controlled environment before applying them to all systems, because sometimes patches also break systems. It is computers, right? So these things happen. There was a time when Windows released a particular patch that was making people's hardware. It was crashing their hardware, and it damaged some people's hardware. And that happens for phones too. There was an Android update sometimes that was specifically destroying, breaking some particular Android phones. You get. So in an organization, this is very important, because if that patch should break your systems, that means it will break all your systems, and then it will disrupt your service and operations. So you have to first test the patches in a controlled environment first to make sure that, okay, the patch is, you've updated this particular control system. The patch is okay, the system is not breaking down, they are working fine. Then you now apply them to all your other systems, right? Sometimes on your phone, if you have some accounts, they will tell you that, oh, there is going to be system maintenance from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. And so those are the times that they will use to apply patches to their system and update their systems, right? Or rule out bug fixes or security patches without necessarily disrupting services and operations. They've already informed you now that, and they usually do it in the middle of the night where you'll be sleeping anyways, right? So those are the best practices for patch management. Now, an example, the 2017 WannaCry ransomware attack now that affected thousands of systems because, organizations and individuals, they failed to apply a security patch that has already been released by Microsoft earlier. I was saying this now, that the ransomware attack attacked people that refused to update their system. So that was what happened. So patch management, very important. Now, to secure software development lifecycle, basics. Software development lifecycle is just software development. Now, security is now being added to it. So software development lifecycle is a structured process. The software development lifecycle itself, SDLC, is a structured process for designing, developing, testing, and deploying software. As simple as that. So when security is now integrated at every stage, all the phases of software development lifecycle, when you integrate security at every stage, you now have what we call secure software development lifecycle. Now, stages of the secure software development lifecycle. These stages sometimes is called phases. So they are the same. The stages of the software development lifecycle is the same with the stages of secure software development lifecycle. The difference is just that at every stage, security is what? Security is integrated. Now we have these 6 phases, very popular. Sometimes you see 5 some places. They combine phase 1 and phase 2, stages 1 and stage 2 in some text. So now, first stage, planning. Define security requirements before development starts. So you define the security requirements of the software before anything. So when you are gathering the information about what the software should be able to do, what people that are going to be using the software, which environments they are going to be using the software, you also define the security requirements during that stage for the software before you even start development. Now, you move to the next stage, which is this design. You now identify potential security risk in your software design. Your software architecture, you look at it, you try to identify potential security in that particular design. Any flaw in the design, you understand the software architecture, any flaw in it, you try to identify it in this stage. Now, you move to the development stage. Development stage is where the software is actually built, where you write the code to build the software. Now, at this phase, the security I'm integrating is to use secure coding practices to minimize vulnerabilities. There are secure coding practices that you use to minimize vulnerabilities. Testing. After you have done building the application, the software, you will now test the software. So this is where you perform security testing, your penetration testing, you understand, of the software, code reviews, web application testing, API testing. You do all this in this particular stage. Then the deployment stage. This is where the software is being taken from development to where the user will use it, right? You are giving it to the user. So at this stage, you ensure that your software is securely configured before release. Before you release the software, make sure that it is securely configured so that they will not use misconfiguration as a vulnerability to attack you. Misconfiguration can be a vulnerability too. Then maintenance. Maintenance is now where after your software has been built, you've deployed it, it's on Apple Store, it's on iOS, or it's in the organization that needs it. You now need to maintain it by regularly updating and patching the software to fix security issues. So that's the security part. So that's where you do what? You release new feature, you add new feature to it, and all of that. You fix bugs and that. So the security aspect that is being integrated at this phase is to regularly update and patch the software to fix security issues. Now, secure coding practices. We're talking about in development, you use secure coding practices to minimize vulnerabilities. So what are these secure coding practices? So an example is input validation. Ensure that everything the user is giving you, you validate it, you check it well. Make sure that it does not contain harmful data, because user will give you anything. You understand? It's user input now, so they can come. You can never trust user. So that's just it. No matter who the user is, you can never trust the user. So ensure input does not contain harmful data. So whatever the user is giving you to feed the system or the software, you make sure you validate it. You make sure you check that it does not contain harmful data, e.g., it prevents SQL injection or cross-site scripting attack. Now, another secure coding practices is to use encryption. We've talked about encryption, right? Protect sensitive data using strong encryption algorithms. You understand? So you take a data, you scramble it up. That's basically what encryption is, using some algorithms so that it becomes unintelligible. You cannot, somebody that just sees it, comes in contact with it, will not be able to read it until they decrypt it. So now, the last secure coding practices that we are going to be looking at, this is not a coding class, there are more than this, a lot more, is error handling. Do not reveal too information in your error messages. Make sure that your software, when it encounters an error, is not revealing too much information about the composition or architecture of the software, because hackers can take this and use it against the software if they know how the software was built and the things the software uses. So make sure that your error handling, your error messages only reveal the information the user needs to see. So sometimes when you go to a website and something is wrong, you just see server error. They will not give you any information about what happened. It's just server error that you will see. So that's an example of a good secure coding practice and error handling. An example: a company developing a banking app follows the secure software development lifecycle principles to prevent vulnerabilities like SQL injection and cross-site scripting attacks. These are vulnerabilities that can lead to an attacker exploiting them. Now, the last thing we'll be looking at is endpoint security. So, basics of endpoint security. What is endpoint security? Endpoint means at the end devices. You understand? The devices that are at the end of everything, the security of those devices. That is what endpoint security is all about. So, what is the formal English definition? So, endpoint security are devices that connect to a network, such as laptops. So, these are examples of endpoint devices that we are trying to tell you, such as laptops, your smartphones, tablets, and IoT devices. So these are devices that connect to a network. So they are the end devices, right? So endpoint security refers to protecting these devices from cyber threats. So protecting your smartphone, your laptop, your smartwatch, you understand, from cyber threats. So that's what endpoint security is all about. There's network security, that's protecting the network, right? So common endpoint security threats, common threats to the endpoint security devices. You have malware attacks, viruses, ransomware, spyware, and trojans infecting devices. So your endpoint devices, your smartphone, your laptops can easily get attacked by malwares. So that's a security threat. There's phishing attacks. Phishing attacks come through endpoint devices. They'll send you an email, it's on your phone, it's on your laptop, they'll call you, they'll send you an SMS, it's on your endpoint devices. So users tricked into revealing sensitive information. So that's phishing attacks that can come through the endpoint devices, and that's one common endpoint security threat. Then unauthorized access. Hackers gaining access to unsecured devices. You didn't lock your phone and you put it down. That's an example of an unsecured device. You get. So now, endpoint security, or your password is just 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it's crazy that you'll be using what is it called? Pattern lock, and somebody will be able to unlock your phone without knowing your pattern. Because when your phone screen is off, your phone magnets fingerprint. If you off it and you look at it from a particular angle, you can see, if you have your pattern there, you can see the pattern, right? You can see the pattern that the person has used. If the person just unlocks it and then lock it back, when you look at it, you can say, okay, this was the pattern the person used, and you try to guess the person pattern. So that's another example of unauthorized access. So these things happen in different ways. All right. So endpoint security best practices now. we've seen best practice for a lot of other things. Now, for endpoints devices, the security best practices for endpoint devices. One, you use antivirus software. So this is like the most important, number one, the most common. So use antivirus software. This will help you with what? Those malicious malwares. So install and update antivirus to detect and remove malware. On your laptops now, your laptops come with Windows Defender, which is a good antivirus, but you can also have another antivirus layered on that. So enable firewalls helps filter out malicious traffic. There's host-based firewalls now on your endpoint devices. So you enable firewalls. Now, implement device encryption. Encrypt data on devices to protect against theft. So protecting against theft is not saying that they will protect your phone against being stolen. It's the data that is being protected against theft. So on your Android now, I think maybe iOS, they do it automatically. But your Android, there is a place in your settings where you can tell your Android to encrypt the data on your devices. You understand? You tell Android, the OS, that all the data on my devices, let it be encrypted. When you are using your phone, you unlock your phone and you are pressing, you have access to the data. They are decrypted for you automatically. But let's say your phone gets stolen, they cannot access your password or anything, but they were able to take out the data. They will not be able to take out the data in the meaningful form. The data will already be encrypted. The only way they can decrypt the data is put it back in your phone and unlock your phone. You understand? And if they can't do that, then the data will be protected against theft. They can't steal the data. Now, another best security practice is to use strong passwords and 2FA. So we've been shouting about it. Use passwords that are strong. Don't use common passwords. Don't use weak passwords. Use strong passwords. Use different passwords across your account, and make sure you have multi-factor authentication or 2FA. Make sure you have it enabled on all your accounts to prevent unauthorized access. Then regular software updates. As with everything, patch management, software updates. Keep all applications up to date. Regular software updates. Then the last one, restrict USB access. You can disable USB ports to prevent malware infections. So there are ways to go about disabling USB ports, because you understand, malwares, especially when it comes to laptops, they mostly spread through USB when it comes to Nigeria, because not a lot of us are on the internet. But USB ports, yes, USB, everybody collects USB from people and try to collect film. Give me film on your system now. Yeah, take this hard drive, take this flash drive. They start transferring malware around. And you see that in a particular gathering, maybe in a school, on a particular campus, they have one virus or Trojan that is very, very common among them that they've shared because of flash drive sharing. So you can disable your USB ports to prevent malware infections. So there are some softwares that help you protect USB ports too. So every time you insert your flash drive, first of all scan it and see that, okay, hope it's not infected, because they can lie to do anything on the system. So an example, an employee's laptop is stolen, but because full disk encryption is enabled, so encryption can be done on laptops too, not just phones. So because full disk encryption is enabled, the thief cannot access the data, because they cannot also, because the laptop also has other security, which means they don't have the password to log into the laptop, because once you have the password, you can easily get to the data. So you have to have layered security. You understand? So if you have full disk encryption enabled, but then your laptop doesn't have password, you see that you are not protecting anything. You get? So protection is done in layered on levels, right? All right. So that's an example. You can look at the class activity. This is a summary. You can look at the homework assignments and all of that. Now, let's talk about cryptography. I think maybe this is where we'll stop, or the week after this. I think that's where we should We'll probably stop one of those either here or the next week, week 7. So cryptography essentials. So this is very important. So we look at it. It's very fun. I hope you find it fun too and easy to follow through. The objectives of the lesson for this particular week is to understand the history and importance of cryptography, differentiate between symmetric and asymmetric encryption. This will always be something that you need to know. This will always be something that you'll probably be asked in exams, in interviews, symmetric and asymmetric encryption. You should be able to explain public key infrastructure and certificates and perform basic file encryption and decryption. So now let's get into it. Now, introduction to cryptography. That's one very important topic in cybersecurity. What is cryptography? Cryptography is the practice of securing information by transforming it into an unreadable format so that only authorized users can access it, which is definitely just straightforward encryption of information, right? So it's the practice of securing information by transforming it from the readable format that it was in into an unreadable format, unintelligible format, so that only authorized users can access it. Only authorized user can access it in the readable format. When unauthorized user access it, if they are able to access it, they will only access the unreadable format, which is going to be useless to them. This protects data from unauthorized access. So if you don't have the way of transforming it back to the readable format, it's just useless to you. And this helps us ensure confidentiality, integrity, authentication, and non-repudiation. So the only thing cryptography does not help us with is availability. You know the CIA triad now: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So it helps with confidentiality, it helps with integrity, it helps with authentication, and it helps with non-repudiation. So we've added 2 more things now. There's authentication and there's non-repudiation. So you get to understand what authentication and non-repudiation is. You already know what confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You already know what those ones are. So now, the 4 main goals of cryptography: confidentiality, integrity, authentication, non-repudiation. Confidentiality: ensuring only authorized users can read the data. That's everything about confidentiality, right? Now, integrity is to ensure that the data is not altered by unauthorized users. The authorized users, they can alter the data. They are allowed to alter the data. So integrity is ensuring that the data is not altered by unauthorized user during transmission or during storage or retrieval, anyone, or even processing. Ensuring the data is not altered during these phases by unauthorized users. Then authentication now. Authentication is verifying the identity of the sender and receiver, making sure that the sender is the sender that we expect to be the sender, and the receiver is the receiver of that particular information. So that's authentication. Then there's non-repudiation. This is ensuring that a sender cannot deny sending a message, and in some cases, a receiver cannot deny receiving a message. So that is non-repudiation, ensuring that the person that sent the message cannot deny that they are not the one that sent the message. You cannot deny it. That's what non-repudiation gives you. So that's a very, very key security concept, because imagine if somebody can send a message and deny it, that they are not the one that sends the message. You know how that can be. So now, historical and modern cryptography. I don't really like history, but let's just look through it, right? Examples: early forms of cryptography. Early forms of cryptography focused on hiding messages using simple techniques. So in the olden times, they hide the messages using simple techniques that they use. Examples is Caesar cipher. Caesar cipher is a simple shift cipher that replaces letters with other replaces sorry this my explanation is confusing. What happens is that it replaces letters by shifting. You know that there is an alphabetical English alphabetical letter. So each letter in the message will be replaced by a specific fixed number of places away. So if you are using three shifts, so every letter will be replaced by a letter 3 letters away from them. Look at this example of hello. Hello is turned into ko. How did this happen? You know, in your alphabetical letters A, B, C, D, E, F, you have H somewhere, right? And you are using three shifts. So from H, you are going to count 3 other letters: H, I, J, K. So you can see. You can see I after H you have what? I, J, K. K is the third letter from H. So H will be replaced by what? K. Let's check E. After E you have F, G, H. So E will be replaced by what? H. And so on and so forth. So that is Caesar cipher. So you shift the letters and you replace them with those letters a number of letters away. So you have decided the shifts you want to use. You can use one shift, you can use 2, 3, as much as you want, 4, 5. You know, that shift number will determine the amount of letters away you are going to move to replace the original letter, right? So that's Caesar cipher. And then there is Enigma machine. The Enigma machine was used during World War II by Germany. It encrypted military messages using complex mechanical ciphers. So this was a little bit more complex than Caesar cipher, you understand? And it was used by Germans in World War II. I think it was later broken, you know, it was later broken. I watched a movie about it one time like that. I've forgotten the title. I would have recommended it for you. It was a very interesting movie. You can ask online the movie about the Enigma machine and World War II. So limitations of historical cryptography. What are the limitations of these examples of cryptography in the olden days that we're using? You know, Caesar cipher is very easy to break. Yourself, you can already see it. You just need to know how many letters away that they are using. So simple ciphers were easy to break with modern computing power. In fact, sef, you don't even need modern computing power. You can use your own brain to easily break Caesar ciphers. So now, they lacked strong encryption mechanism to protect against advanced attacks. Yes, so that's the limitations of this historical cryptography. So there's no much story of history there. So it's very interesting one. So now, we are now coming to modern cryptography. What is cryptography like in modern day? Modern cryptography relies on complex mathematical algorithms to ensure security. Complex mathematical algorithms. These algorithms, they get broken into, right? So it's the world of computers. Nothing is totally entirely safe in the real sense of it. So now, but they are a lot more difficult, almost impossible to break uh, encryption standards that we have now. So examples of modern cryptography, we have the AES, Advanced Encryption Standard. That's what AES is for. We have the RSA, that's Revert Shamel Aduman is encryption. And the name is the name of somebody. So and that name is it's not just an ordinary English name. So that's why it might not be easy to remember like that. Right? So just Aduman encryption, RSA. So now we have hash functions too. Different hash functions. SHA-256, MD5, SHA-512. A lot of hash functions out there. Now, AES is used for encrypting files, databases, and communications, right? RSA encryption, a widely used encryption algorithm for secure communications. Hash functions used to verify data integrity, e.g., ensuring downloaded file is not altered, right? Now, let's move to symmetric and asymmetric encryption. So you have examples of encryption up here, examples of modern cryptography, and you have examples of historical cryptography. So let's move to symmetric versus asymmetric encryption. This is where things get interesting and questions comes from it. Like all the time you go to interview, they'll ask you question about it, what's your understanding, what's the differences. You get they even give you some scenario that, okay, if it is this scenario, what encryption should you use? If it is this other scenario, what encryption are you going to use? And each scenario have like one type of encryption that is best for each of the scenarios. As you will see, they both have advantages and disadvantages. So depending on your situation, you pick the one that is best for that particular situation. There's no size fits all when it comes to this state. Now, symmetric versus asymmetric encryption. Encryption is a method of converting readable data into an unreadable format. You can remember from your cryptography, right? So encryption is a method of converting readable data into an unreadable format to prevent unauthorized access. So the readable data is usually called plain text, and the unreadable format is called ciphertext, right? So now, symmetric encryption. So that's encryption. Encryption, the definition of encryption as a whole. Then we are picking it one by one. So we'll pick symmetric, and then we'll later talk about asymmetric. So symmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption uses a single key, one, for both encryption and decryption. Encryption is what? Is a method of converting readable data into an unreadable format to prevent unauthorized access. Now, decryption is the opposite. It's the method of converting unreadable format of data into a readable data so that you can have authorized access to it. So now, for symmetric encryption, a single key, just one key, is used for both symmetric and asymmetric. Excuse me. Alright, so now for asymmetric, as I've said, a single key is used for both encryption and decryption, which means you use the same key you are going to use to turn your data from readable format to unreadable format. It's the same key you are going to use to turn it from unreadable format to the readable format. Now, an example of symmetric encryption is Advanced Encryption Standard. So Advanced Encryption Standard is an example of symmetric encryption. It is widely used for data encryption. Advantages of symmetric encryption now. It is fast and efficient. It is suitable for encrypting large amounts of data. So it is fast and efficient, and it is suitable for encrypting large amounts of data. Now, the disadvantages is that since it uses one key, the key must be securely shared between the sender and the receiver. You understand? That one key is very important that it is safe. It is securely shared between sender and receiver. If the key is exposed, all encrypted data is at risk because it is that same key that you used for encryption that will be used for decryption. So once that key is exposed, all your encrypted data is exposed. Example of symmetric encryption process now. Alice encrypts a message using key X and sends the message to Bob. So Alice and Bob, they want to communicate. So the message that Alice wants to get across to Bob, Alice uses key X to encrypt that message, right? Then send the message to Bob. Then Bob uses the same key X to decrypt the message to get the content of that message. So Alice needs to have a way to securely also communicate key X to Bob so that Bob can use that key to decrypt the message. So that is symmetric encryption, and that's the process. Now, asymmetric encryption, also called public key cryptography. You will soon find out why it is called public key cryptography. So now, asymmetric encryption unlike Symmetric, it uses two different keys. Symmetric encryption, don't forget, uses just one key. Asymmetric encryption uses two keys. One for encryption, that is the public key. So two keys are involved, public key and private key. You understand? So that's where the public key cryptography comes in. Because key X, that symmetric key, that one single key is a private key, right? It has to be private. But for asymmetric, there is an addition of another key, which is the public key. The public key is what is used for encryption. And another key, which is the private key, is used for decryption. So two different keys are used when it comes to asymmetric encryption. The public key, which is public from the name, is public. Everyone has access to it, right? And it is the one that is used for encryption. And then the private key is the one that is used for decryption. You understand? An example of asymmetric encryption is the RSA, reversed sharing Alderman. So the Alderman encryption is commonly used for secure communication. Now, advantages of asymmetric encryption. No need to share the private key. So the private key is what? Is secured because you don't need to share it. The private key is only for you, that you need to decrypt the message. So you keep your private key, you are not sharing it. You only share what? Your public key. So we'll see an example of the process. Another advantage is it is used in secure website connections. So our HTTPS uses asymmetric encryption, public key cryptography. So disadvantages, the cons, it is slower than symmetric encryption. Yeah, it is slower. It requires more processing power, right? It requires more processing power. So now, let's look at an example of the asymmetric encryption process, right? Unlike the symmetric, this is what happens. So now, let's say Alice and Bob, they want to communicate, right? The way they communicated using symmetric key. So they want to communicate. Alice wants to send a message to Bob. So Alice will ask Bob for his public key. So Bob has a public private key combination. So Alice will ask Bob for his public key. Bob will send the public key to Alice. The public key does not need to be secured. You understand? The public key does not need to be secured. They are public, right? So Bob does not need to send his public key securely to Alice. You can just send it through any means. You understand? Because that key is used to decrypt message. And once you use that key to decrypt message, the only key that can that key is used to encrypt message. The public key is used to encrypt message. I'm sorry, that was a slip of tongue. Public key is used to encrypt message. So that public key will be used to encrypt message. And it is only the private key part of that public key that can be used to decrypt the message. So Alice will ask Bob, please send me your public key. I want to encrypt a message and send to you. Bob will send the public key to Alice. Alice will take that public key and use it to encrypt a message. Then send the message to what? To Bob. Bob will now use his private key to decrypt the message. So that is the process. It is only Bob's private key that can decrypt messages that are encrypted with Bob's public key. You understand that? So common uses: email encryption, your email encryption, pretty good privacy. Secure website connection, SSL, TLS, that's HTTPS. Now, we are going to move to another thing, another topic, which is public key infrastructure and certificates. So, what is public key infrastructure? We've done public key cryptography. We've explained what public key cryptography to ourselves. That is sorted. So, what is now public key infrastructure? What is this new infrastructure thing that is not cryptography? So, public key infrastructure, system is a system that manages digital keys and certificates to enable secure communication over the internet. So that's just PKI. The system that manages the digital keys and certificates for us to be able to securely communicate over the internet. That is public key infrastructure. It now has some components, right? What are the components? There's the certificate authority, there's the digital certificates, digital keys and certificates. There's public and private keys, and then there's a certificate revocation list. So these are the components of public key infrastructure. What is certificate authority? This component is just a trusted organization, an authority, that's been given the responsibility to handle these things, power. So it's a trusted organization that issues digital certificates. So that's the certificate authority. So there are a lot of authorities out there. Trusted organization that has been saddled with the responsibility of issuing digital certificates. Now, digital certificates itself. What are digital certificates? You know public and private keys already, but what are digital certificates? Digital certificates, they are what contain a user's public key and identity details. So that's just a certificate. Digital certificate when it comes to cryptography, public key infrastructure. So it is just something that contains a user's public key and identity details. And as I've said, a public key is public. It's not something you would, You would be guarding or safeguarding. It's what you just put out there. For example, there are even sites online where you can go and upload your public key. And when somebody wants to send you anything, just tell them to go there. They will search using your email and they will see your public key. And they can use that public key to encrypt whatever they want to send to you. And your private key is only for you. You are not sharing that with anybody. You understand? So it's safely and secured with you. Now, public and private keys. We've already talked about this. So these are what are used for encrypting and decrypting data, respectively. So public key for encrypting, private key for decrypting. Then certificate revocation list, a list of revoked certificates. The digital certificates that the certificate authority, the trusted organization, is issuing. They can be revoked. So when a certificate has been revoked, they go on the certificate revocation list of revoked certificates. So these are the components of public key infrastructure. Now, how does public key infrastructure works? How does it work? A user requests a digital certificate from a certificate authority, a trusted organization that is saddled with the responsibility of issuing digital certificates. So a user will go to this certificate authority, trusted organization, right, and request a digital certificate from them. The certificate authority verifies the identity of this user and then issues a digital certificate to them, right? Then this certificate can now be used for secure communication over the internet. For example, your website HTTPS encryption, right? The TLS and SSL. So they use such digital certificates, and these digital certificates are certificates that you get from the certificate authority. So if we go to some of these websites and check the encryption, the HTTPS, you will see the digital certificates, you will see the certificate authority there. So let's try and check one. Okay, so let's come here, right? Now, this is Google. This is my Gmail. So this is, let's check, it's secured, right? You can see. You can check here, connection is secured. If you click on this connection is secured on Chrome, you can see certificate is valid. You can click on this certificate to see, you can see issued to this person. issued by WR2, Google Trust Services. So this is the certificate authority, and this is the user the certificate was issued to. You can see the issue date and the expire date. And you can also see the certificates, the public key. This is SHA-256 fingerprints of the certificate and the public key. This is not the public key itself, right? So this is an hash of the public key and the certificate. You get. So you can also see details here, other details, right? Certificate hierarchy, certificate fields, all of that. And click on them to see what is in there, right? Can click on them and see what's in them. CRL, can see CRL distribution point. This is certificate revocation list. Remember, certificate revocation list. So policies, authority information access. You can see, you can get a lot of details here. Just click on it. Authority key ID, subject key ID, basic constraints, extended key usage, certificate key usage, subject public key, algorithm. See, subject public key. So this is the public key itself. You can see that you can even export it. Gives you the opportunity to export that to use. So issuer, this is the issuer, country, US, organization, common name, certificate signature algorithm. You can see RSA, SHA-256 with RSA, public key cryptography. So you can see that RSA, reverse Shamir Aldoman encryption. So that is what is popularly used for public private key generation. Asymmetric key, asymmetric encryption. So, all right, let's go back to our notes now. So now, example, when you visit a website with HTTPS, your browser checks the website digital certificate. So your browser will check that certificate to ensure it is legitimate and secure. So when your browser is checking the certificate, your browser is also going to check against the certificate revocation list to make sure that that particular certificate is still valid and legitimate, and it has not been revoked by the issuer, that's the authority, CA. So it will also check. If it has been revoked, then it will not be legitimate again, and it will not be secured, and it will let you know, right? So sometimes you get some websites and you see that they have a certificate, but your browser is still telling you that this website is not secured because the certificate is not legitimate. Maybe it's on a certificate revocation list, or it is just not legitimate in the first place. So let's do some hands-on on encrypting and decrypting files. So you can see we'll be writing code here. We'll be using our terminal. So as I've said, for this course, cybersecurity, you need your own personal computer. There's no way you want to do it. You would need your own personal computer to be able to do these things. You can see now, from right now, I've started writing things that you need computers for, right? So write code, the explanation, you see hands-on how it works actually, because in class mostly theory, especially this course, it's a lot of theory, but then the small practicals in between them like this, we can do them and they are fun, right? You can easily start even in your own time encrypting and decrypting data and sending it to your friends. So you can say, if I want to send you something, you people already have your keys, and maybe it's even through website where WhatsApp you send it, but you don't trust WhatsApp because you're sending message, WhatsApp is telling you there's end-to-end encryption, but you don't trust it. Then you encrypt those data yourself and then send it, right? So we have hands-on on encryption, both symmetric and asymmetric. So we'll start with symmetric first, and we are going to be using OpenSSL, right? I'm going to be using OpenSSL. So if you are on a Windows laptop, go to Windows and type terminal. I hope you can see my screen. So once you type terminal like this, this will bring you your terminal. You can easily just type OpenSSL and press enter and see if it brings this for you. If it's telling you that command not found, then there's a problem. You can type OpenSSL -version to see, okay, see, is it -- version or okay, so OpenSSL version to see the version of your OpenSSL. So OpenSSL is what we are going to be using for encryption and decryption. You can see it has a lot of different ciphers. There is advanced encryption standard, there's SHA-256, there should be MD5. You can see there's MD5 here, there's SHA-512, there's Blake, there's RSA. Trying to find RSA on the list, but there will be RSA, I'm sure of that. So you can see a lot of encryption that you can use. Okay, I see a lot. These are commands. You can see RSA there. Definitely is going to be there. So it supports both symmetric and asymmetric encryption, and we are going to be diving deep, getting our hands dirty and trying this out. I promise it's going to be fun. So if you don't have OpenSSL, you can download and install. So just Google or ask ChatGPT how you can go about installing OpenSSL on your particular OS. If you are using Mac OS, for example, or Linux or Windows, it will tell you how to go about it. And then you have OpenSSL like this to work with. So I'm clearing the screen. Now, let's go back to the notes. Now, in the notes, what we want to dive into first is the symmetric encryption. So symmetric encryption. So what we are going to do is we are going to encrypt and decrypt a file using symmetric encryption process. And you know symmetric encryption is going to be using one key. It's symmetric. So you are going to be using the same key that you are using for encryption for decryption, right? So without further ado, let's get into it. Yes, so I'm going to be using OpenSSL. As I've said, you need your terminal and all of that. So we're getting into it now. You need to pay very rapt attention here, and the terminal code that I'm going to write is going to be a bit different from what is in the material. So pay attention, because what is in the material is not the latest way to do things. Some of the things in the material are already old school. They've been deprecated, which means they've been dropped from better ways to do it. So I'm going to show you a better way to do it. So you should write it down so that you will not confuse what is in the notes with what is better now and what is accepted standard. So let's get into it. I'm opening my terminal. I hope you can see it. Let me try to make it a bit big. Okay, it's big enough. So now, I've created a file. While on my system, I have files on my system. So I'm going to choose one of these and then this. I'm going to choose one of these for the symmetric encryption, and I'm going to use this for the asymmetric encryption. Now, this is the downloads folder, and I'm in the dev folder. So I need to move into the downloads folder. So CD, change directory to downloads. So I'm in the downloads folder. I can easily access the files that are in the downloads folder. So now, if you want to learn how to move between folders, you can learn that the command you need to use. or you go to the folder. You can do something like this on Windows. I know you can do something like this. You come here and type CMD or something like that. Yeah, you can see that, and it opens and downloads for you automatically. Now, so pay attention, we are using OpenSSL. So OpenSSL, that's first command. It's OpenSSL we are using. Then ENC, encryption, ENC. Then we want to specify the algorithm we want to use, the encryption type we want to use. In this case, which is AES. So I'm going to be typing AES 256. There are different AES encryption there. We are using AES 256 CBC, like in your note, right? Then salt. Salt is what we are going to use to say, okay, we want to encrypt this particular file. So now I'm going to use the public key derivation function 2. So that's what I'm going to use, and I am going to do an iteration like hashing function. I'll hash it a number of times. So I'm going to iterate hash, let's say 1000 times. The bigger the iteration, the better for your encryption. But then the bigger it is, the slower the encryption gets to. So I'm just going to use 1000 here. And then I'll specify in what is the input file. That is the input file, the file that I want to encrypt. That is the plain text file that I want to encrypt. What is it? So I'll specify the file name here, which is chainsaw. You can see I'm encrypting Chainsaw Man English Season 1 Episode 2.srt. So that is the file that I am encrypting. Right, so I'm specifying it. Then I'll specify the output file, what I get after encryption now, the ciphertext. So I'm going to specify it also. So I want to give it a name. I'm thinking, okay, let's say chainsaw AES.enc. All right, so that's the name that I want to give it. Now, the key that I want to use, remember, you are going to use a key for symmetric encryption. So it's the same key you would use for what? For decryption. So encrypting now, and then decrypting later. So the key that I want to use, you can use any key, but the more secure your key is, the better for you. So I'm going to just use some random key here, right? So I think this is good enough. So now I'm done. I'm going to hit the enter button, and the file is supposed to get encrypted. We are supposed to get the encrypted version out as chainsaw_AES. All right, so now that is done. That is done. If we go to my downloads folder, refresh, you can see now that we have a chainsaw_AES.enc. Let's try to check. This is what we encrypted. Chainsaw Man English S1E2. Let's check what is in there. Let's check the content. Yeah, you can see the content. It's very readable. That was my stomach. What's your name? And timestamp. It's Denji. I need to tell you something right now. From now, you are in my care. Denji, blah, 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 like that. Right? So now, let's check the equivalent encrypted file. Let's see what is in there too. Edit in Notepad. So as you can see, what is in there, it is unintelligible. It is unreadable. Nobody can read this and get this out just from looking at it. You can see what is here. This is just simple straightforward English. I can see what we have here. This is just rubbish. It's not even English. It's nothing that you can read. Like, you can't get anything from it, right? So let me close it. Let me close them back again, right? So we have this, and we have this. It has been encrypted. Now, to the decryption. For the decryption, we also have Open SSL, ENC, the same encryption algorithm, AES, CBC. Now, instead of salt, because we are using salt to encrypt, it will be -D, which is for decrypt. And then we'll use our public key derivation function 2, EEKDF2, and then the same ITAR 2, 1000, right? The same ITAR, we use the same thing. Then in. Now, what is going to go in now is the encrypted file. So we have chainsaw_AES, right? That is what is going in. And then we'll now have out. What's going out is the decrypted version of it, which I want to call chainsaw_AES_decrypted.txt. So that is what I want to call the decrypted data. Now, don't forget that we are not done. We still have to add our key. So we are going to use the same key. The same key we use for encryption is the same key we are going to use for decryption. So let's use the same key. If the key is wrong, then you won't get your file. The decryption will fail. So now we're done. I can just hit enter, and then the decryption is done. AES is fast, as you know. So you can see we already have our file here, which is the decrypted file. Let's open it and see. You can see that we have back the readable format. How fun is that? So that is symmetric encryption. And as you can see, we are using the same key for what? Both encryption and decryption. So you can take screenshots, and yes, let me make it a little bit smaller so that maybe they can all be on the same line. Okay, this is too small, but I'm sure you can see it if you take a screenshot. Let me try to make it bigger. Like this. All right, I think it's better like this for you, so you can look at it. You can see that there are a lot of things that are different in this particular method that I'm using with regards to what we have in the material. So now let's move to the asymmetric encryption. So I'm going to clear the screen. Yes. So now for the asymmetric encryption, I want to use the plain text file. So let me open the plain text file for you, so you will see the contents of the file. So you can see the content of the file. It's what? Super secret message classified. So that's the content of the file that I want to encrypt using asymmetric encryption. We are still going to be using OpenSSL, right? And remember, for asymmetric encryption, you need to first have what? Your private key and your public key. How do we get the private and public key? So that's the next question. Private and public key, unlike the key we used in our symmetric encryption, where we just came up with some key phrase, right? Or passphrase. This will be generated for us by OpenSSL automatically. So they are not things that just come up with in your head. You understand? There's a particular way to go about generating these keys. So we'll start with generating the private key first. Then we are going to extract the public key from the private key. We will now use that public key in encryption, and we use the private key for the decryption. So let's get into it. All right, still open SSL. Right now, gen RSA, generate RSA. Remember, RSA, Rivet, Shamir, Aduma is what? Is an algorithm that is a type under asymmetric encryption. AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, is an algorithm under what? Symmetric encryption. So now, RSA, I'm generating my private key. Out, I want to generate it and output it in a file. The name I want to give that file is private key.pem. So I'm giving the file private key.pem name and a size of 2048 bytes. So that's the size that I want it to be. So when you are generating your RSA like this, you give it a size of 2048 bytes. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to just press enter. So my private key has been generated, and we can confirm this by going to the download folder. You can see it's already there. We can also check the content. You can see what is there. This is not something you just come up with yourself, right? You can see begin private key, end private key. Now, let's move on to extracting our public key from the private key. Now we have the private key, we need to get the public key out. Open SSL, right? Open SSL, then RSA. We have RSA. Input file, what we want to, the file we want to input, the private key. So that's the input for this. Private key is the input, and the output will be what? The public key. So I'm going to say private key.pem. So that's my input. That's my file name, file that contains the private key. Now, I'm outputting what? Public key. So public key is what I'm getting out. And then I want to get it out in a file, output file. Then I'll give the file a name. So public key.pem. You can see I'm extracting the public key out of the private key. So this is telling OpenSSL that I want to generate a public key out of this. And the output file, I want it to be outputted in public key.pem. Create a file public key.pem and let me put the public key inside it. It's as simple as that, very short. Press enter. You can see writing RSA key. And my public key has been generated. You can see public key.pem. You can also check the content of the public key. So you can see begin public key, end public key, and this is what you have. And what you have here is very different from what you have here. It's not the same in any way. You can see that it's not the same in any way at all. So you cannot use the public key to like kind of guess or come up with the private key. No, you can only use the private key to generate the public key, but you can never get the private key from the public key. So that's why it is public for everybody. So anybody that wants to send a file to me can use this public key, anybody at all. And then I will need this particular private key to decrypt the file. Now, let's encrypt and decrypt the file. So we are going to be using the public key to encrypt, right? Don't forget that. Now, we are still using OpenSSL. The command for that is public key util, pkutl, right? pkutl, and then the encrypt option, pkutl. I want to encrypt this particular thing, right? So, and I want to use a public key. So pop in, remember, my public key that I want to use a public key. So now I'm going to specify in key, the key, the input key, the public key, the input key itself. I'll specify the file, which is public key.pem. That's where it is located. Now, the in file, the file that I want to encrypt is plain text.txt, right? So I have my key, public key. I have the file that I want to encrypt. Then I need an output file when the encryption is done, where it will be stored. The output file after the encryption. So that is out. Then the name that I want to give to it, right? I'll say cipher text rsa.enc. So that's the name I want to give. You can give it any name you want. So that's the name I want to give my encrypted file, cipher text underscore rsa. So let's assume this is now Alice, and Bob has sent his public key to Alice, and Alice wants to encrypt a message and send to Bob, right? So Bob is the only one that has the private key, and Bob sent the public key to Alice. Now Alice is going to use the public key to encrypt the file the way we are doing like this, the data. So, and then Alice will get out the encrypted data and send that encrypted data to Bob. Then on Bob's end, Bob is going to use his private key to decrypt this encrypted data to get the plain text, the readable format back. So now let's finish the encryption and then move to the decryption, right? I press enter again. The file has been encrypted. Let's see the content of the encrypted file. This is the encrypted file. You can try to see the content and use your notepad. You can see that it is very unintelligible. We went from this super secret message classified to this. There's no way anybody can just come from this and get this, right? So let's now decrypt. We are decrypting basically through the same process, but in the other way around. So look at the command. OpenSSL is still the same pkutl that we are using, right? And this time is decrypt. Now we need to decrypt using what? The private key and not the public key. So we are not going to be specifying that our key is public again. So we are not using pub in anymore. We are just saying in key, right? Automatically OpenSSL knows that it's decryption we want to use. So the in key that we are passing is what? Is the private key. So in key, and then we now specify the private key. You can see there is two different keys this time, not like Symmetric that we use the same passphrase, the same key. So now the file that I want to encrypt, in file, input file. What's the file name again? Cipher text. Cipher text underscore rsa.enc. That is what I named, right? My encrypted file. Now I want to decrypt it. Out the decrypted file. What name should it have? I want to give it plain text underscore rsa decrypted .txt. So that's it. I'm done. I am done. I don't have anything else to do. I'm pressing enter. I have successfully decrypted the file using the private key. So on Bob's end now, Bob uses private key with the encrypted file that Alice sent to him and decrypted it. And now he can open it and read the message. You can see this is the file. You can open it and read the message. You can see super secret message classified. The same thing in my plain text. You can see this is plain text, and this is the plain text RSA decrypted. The same message. I can now see it. I can read it. So this is how you can encrypt and decrypt data between two people that are communicating, or more than two people that are communicating. Now, one caveat that I want to talk about here is that for RSA, there's a limitation that comes with it in as regards to the size of the file you can decrypt with it. So now, the size of the file you can decrypt with RSA is dependent on the size of the key itself, the private key, the RSA key. So if the file is bigger than the key, you would not be able to encrypt it with the key. It won't work, right? The file has to be smaller or the same size as the key when it comes to RSA. But that does not matter when it comes to AES. AES can encrypt as big file as possible. Now, what really happens in the real world is that key, that symmetric key AES is using, because the key is not that big, it's just a key, we'll use RSA, we use asymmetric, we use the asymmetric algorithm to encrypt the symmetric key. So all our communications are going to be, because symmetric is also fast, remember, all our communications are going to be encrypted using the symmetric algorithm, all of them. But the key for that symmetric algorithm itself is going to be encrypted using the asymmetric algorithm, so that we can easily share the key without any risk of exposing our private key. You understand that? So that is what we'll do. And that's what happens in the real world. I just wanted to point that out. Now, we have done both encryption and decryption. You can see the examples here. Please follow the code that we actually used in practicing, as this code is old and outdated mostly. So you can look at the class activity, you can do that. Hands-on cryptography, you can do the class activities. Summary, you can look at the homework and assignment too. And then that's all for week 6. We are going to stop here, and if time permits me, I will find time to explain week 7 to you guys, and maybe week 8. But if there is not enough time, you already have enough lesson notes and then guidance lecture for you to be able to pass your exam in flying colors. So I wish you the best of luck, and inshallah we will see next semester. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.